Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we bring you the Atom versus the Man Alternative Currency Ultimate Throwdown. Now, for the spirit of tonight's debate, which is truly a debate, we are going to be allowing various platforms and proposals to be considered tonight. It is done in the spirit of cooperation. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn on behalf of anybody here to say that we all recognize the scam that is the Federal Reserve System. We all recognize what the money masters are trying to do to the American people and the people of the world through the fiat currency scams. And we are here in support of each other as we explore these various alternatives to using Federal Reserve notes. Now, just to be absolutely clear, there is a moral imperative to not use United States dollars, because by simply holding U.S. dollars today, you are empowering the Federal Reserve System. You are empowering the government to be able to create money that is considered of value in the market in a way that allows them to manipulate economic resources throughout the world. So, joining us from Summit County, Colorado, Wayne Walton on the left monitor here is going to be representing Mountain Hours and the idea of local community-based currencies for all the various ways that they can come about. And he is a personal monetary reform activist, someone who helped create the system of Mountain Hours, a local organic currency that is stabilized now in Summit County, Colorado. There's plenty of information on this at mountainhours.com, mtnhours.com. And Wayne is also a self-described, I guess, is this the correct pronunciation, Wayne? Jubilist?
Yes.
Jubilist, who believes that real revolution is monetary reform based on the Jubilee and eliminating usury. Bill Still, in the middle monitor here, is a former newspaper editor and publisher, best-selling author, and award-winning documentary writer and director. He's written for USA Today, the Saturday Evening Post, the LA Times, Omni Magazine, and produced the first syndicated radio shorts program, Health News. He's written 20 books, including his latest, No More National Debt. He's done 3 feature-length documentaries, including The Money Masters, one of the most watched films in internet history, and The Secret of Oz, winner of the best documentary of 2010 at the Beloit International Film Festival. Mr. Still, did I miss anything in your long resume of accomplishments there? We've got a little bit of a slowdown on the Skype from Bill. Looks like it's connection on his end, but we'll work on that. Charlie Shrem, join us, as you can see on the right monitor here, is the co-founder of BitInstant LLC and its current CEO. He's known on the Bitcoin forums as Yankee. I don't know if that's going to do you any favors here tonight, Mr. Shrem. He has over 5 years' experience working with startups and business development in the e-commerce industry. Along with Gareth, he founded the need for more secure, fast, and convenient way of transferring funds between and within exchanges. Living in New York City, he consults with dozens of businesses on how to manage their development, especially in the realm of adopting this new currency. Now, the spirit of this debate seems to be one of cooperation and seeking an alternative to the United States dollar. But there's one thing that's missing here tonight. So on behalf of agrismetals.com, I'll be representing hard money. That's right. Gold, silver, copper, physical coins that you can own and hold in your hands. And it's important to note that tonight's debate is brought to you by agrismetals.com. And you can see if you'll be convinced to never buy gold and silver from us ever again if these gentlemen do their job. But before we get into the actual distinct differences in these currencies, I'd like to give each of you a chance to tell us about how you got into this and why it's so important to be involved in the alternative currency movement. Wayne, we'll give you the chance to go first here. If you could, in just a couple of minutes, give us that introduction, please.
Well, I woke up in 2008 and basically came to find that the United States went bankrupt in 1933. The gold that was turned into the Federal Reserve, And then from there, that opened up a whole process where for a while I was a gold bug. And after watching Mr. Still's documentaries, I became a greenbacker. And because I wanted to take action and implement something, I came upon Paul Glover's Ithaca Hours. And this is a way you can actually affect monetary reform without waiting for a vote. So basically, I've committed my soul to monetary reform because it's essential that we remove the money power from power so that humanity can evolve.
And we're trying to get Charlie or Bill Still back on here. Is there, Charlie? Do we know what's going on with that? Charlie,
working on
the boards, not Charlie Shrem. All right, Mr. Shrem, if you would please give us that introduction to yourself in terms of how you got involved with these issues and why you think it's important to be involved in the alternative currency movement.
Well,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, hello.
A lot of Bitcoiners fell into the Bitcoin rabbit hole last year when there was, about 2 years ago actually, when there was a big press speculation on a few different things that you can do with Bitcoin. And I think it kind of woke up a lot of people who've been saying that this monetary system that we have in the world now is just old, it's outdated, it's not technologically advanced, it's in the 50s and 60s, and there needs to be, with the legacy payment system and way to move money around the world, there needs to be an intrinsic or real currency that's backing a payment system like this. So we fell down that rabbit hole and got really involved. The problem was at the time the price was exchanging, was the price of the exchange of Bitcoins was going up really quickly, and we couldn't get money in fast enough as the largest exchange is based in Japan. So what we did was started a company where you can go and buy Bitcoin at any local 7-Eleven, Walmart, CVS, and a bunch of other locations that we have.
So, Charlie, what's the status with Mr. Still?
Okay, here I am.
Just a moment.
All right, Mr. Still, if you would please go ahead and tell us, just by way of a couple minutes of background, how you first got involved with these issues of monetary policy and why you think it's so important to be involved with the alternative currency movement.
Well, I got involved when I was running a newspaper in Northern Virginia in 1980, and I called me up and said, boy, there's no gold left in Fort Knox. And I didn't understand the story, but I wrote it up as best as I could and then tried to piece together what was going on later on. And the reason this is important is because it is the root cause of all of our, not only our economic problems today, but most of the world's social problems as well. And once we solve this, and only when we solve this, we'll be able to solve most of the world's hunger, poverty, misery, and disease. And I think that's probably enough for one lifetime.
All right, now that we've got all three of you on, gentlemen, we'll give you the chance to make the case for what you're advocating. Take notes because there will be a rebuttal. Wayne, if you would please, what is Mountain Hours and why have you chosen this particular mechanism of supporting alternative currencies?
Well, as you're discussing earlier, during monetary collapse, don't count the silver. What they do have is time, and they resort to order. Yes, that's
Well, what's going on, Charlie?
It's not coming
Is
out
that
of the
just
speaker.
coming out of the speakers?
It's not coming out of the computer.
It's all static.
Where's the static coming from?
I'm trying to find out which line.
Government.
That line.
Which is that coming from, Mr. Still?
Yeah.
It just went off.
I can, fine.
We're clean now.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Walton.
So anyway, what had happened during Argentina's peso collapse is people had no money, so they resorted to using barter script. And people don't have gold and silver during a collapse. People don't have anything. They're destitute. What actually happens during the collapse is the doors close. They don't have too much money. They have no money. So now they're able to barter and trade. And I think generally we would all agree that barter would be the original form of trade. The barter is unwieldy because you need a partner for timing and quantity. So if we just money was then issued as an IOU. A producer issued the IOU themselves. So the closer that we get to that form of money, which is abundant, it's actually a private contract is an IOU that's issued on paper. We shouldn't be afraid of paper money. We should be afraid who issues the paper. As long as the producers are issuing it, it's distributed, meaning it's local and organic. It's issued by producers. The producers spend it first. It's voluntary. Mountain Hours fulfills all of those roles, and because it's issued without a debt or interest, it's also loaned without interest. So this is the currency that follows sacred economics, meaning that Jews, Christians, and Muslims for thousands of years all forbid usury. Mountain Hours is following sacred economics, which was learned through trial and error over a very long period of time, that people don't end up being debt slaves. That's the natural consequence of any currency that's based upon interest. That is the true demon, is usury, interest, or riba. All of those things mean the same thing. And because this currency is denominated, it's based upon time. Time is the only commodity that a poor man has the same amount as a rich man. Poor men don't have oil wells, they don't have gold mines, they don't have bitcoins. None of those things does the poor man have access to, but a poor man does have access to Mountain Hours. We've actually had End the Fed activists. I'm actually at a We Are Change Colorado house, and they earned Mountain Hours just for setting up and organizing an End the Fed rally. They earned currency because they could trade their time for the currency. That's how abundant money should be. And because we organize it locally, we can keep a handle on it so that there's no inflation. And in addition to that, we can trade these currencies internationally because they're all based upon the same denominated unit of an hour of time. That has a fixed value. An hour will always be an hour, whereas gold and silver and bitcoins, they all fluctuate. Well, you want to have a currency that's based upon something that's fixed, that you measure like an inch. And we live in a paradigm that we always have scarce money. And just as Bill still was alluding to, we don't have to live in scarcity. We should never run out of money, because the amount of productivity that we have is unlimited. Human productivity is unlimited. We would never say that we're going to run out of inches and we can't build a house. As long as we produce, we can always create more money to reflect that value. So I believe Mountain Hours encompasses all of those issues, and because of that, it's abundant, so it allows for us to create an abundant society, not a scarcity society that we have right now.
Mr. Still, please describe the currency system that you're advocating.
Yeah, well, I just want to disagree with Wayne Walton in the following points. None. I agree with him completely. I couldn't agree with him more. I mean, he's right on. His description of currency being capable of being in abundance instead of in scarcity is exactly right. His description of interest and riba is exactly right. I just take no issue with anything he said.
Well, if you would please explain the system that you would advocate for as a government-controlled greenback type currency.
Well, I think, yeah, I believe in debt-free government-issued money, but I also believe in complementary currencies as well. I think that's a safety net, and basically it goes along with my basic premise that power always needs to be deconsolidated to the maximum extent practical.
How does your government-issued debt-free currency work?
It works the same way it worked during the time of Abraham Lincoln. The government shouldn't. The government should be able to issue all the money that it needs without debt. And in your intro, you made a a mistake that you made the same time last time I was on. That's the government does not create any money. That's what the mistake you're making is that you think the Fed is part of the government. The Fed is not part of the government. The Fed, and even then, the Fed is only creating money in the banks create every dime in our system as an interest-bearing debt. The government does not create money other than coins, and that's a very small percentage.
Thank you, sir. Charlie Shrem, now seemingly on a different page, how does Bitcoin stack up against these proposals?
It's interesting that you mentioned Abraham Lincoln, because I think during the Civil War is when the South was printing so much money just to pay back the debt that was caused by the Civil War. But I really like mountain hours. I was actually in Summit County recently, and I think that it's a really cool idea. And the way it works is really smart. I have a few things that I'm concerned about. Is I just don't like the idea of a currency issued by debt. I think the second thing is that it's kind of hard to debate the fact that mountain hours are something that could be international and global, especially in the world that we're living in. Especially in the technological world that we're living in. At the end of the day, people want to pay with their smartphones or the simplest way possible and be able to send money around the world as simple, as easy, and as cheap, and as fast as possible, because it shouldn't take 9% with Western Union in 3 days to send money to Canada or Mexico when it's right across the border. With Bitcoin, my argument is that Bitcoin has two sides to it. One is that people look at it as a currency. That's not the first thing you should look at it as, because there's something that gives Bitcoin value, and that's the uppercase B. The fact that it's a global payment system within itself. The fact that it's mathematically impossible for anyone to ever freeze your funds. Mathematically impossible for anyone to tell you that you can't pay someone else. It's mathematically impossible for someone to limit the amount of money that you're sending. And when you can do it, and you can send $250,000 to a business partner in Japan on a U.S. banking holiday and continue doing my work without having to deal with banking holidays and closing of the wire transfer system. And it costs, I know a guy he has a company in Japan, and he's having to pay wire fees and currency conversion fees to pay all of his factories in China and all over the world. So there are a few points from that. And like you said, I think that one of the first things you mentioned was that a poor man has time, and that the currency is based on time. And I really like that idea too. But you also said that the poor man doesn't have Bitcoin, and the poor man doesn't have this, and the poor man doesn't have that. But at the same time, there are other people who have Bitcoin, like me, and I'll say, you want to work, this is the price, and this is, you think you're valued at this amount, and you can come work, and I'll give you Bitcoin, and that's how you spread it. So now instead of having to deal with someone who wants to build me a website and giving them mountain hours down the block, I can expand my search and have someone build me a website anywhere in the world and pay them through Bitcoin.
Well, before we get on to the issue of the universalizability or the global potential for any of these systems, I want to address the issue of usury. And you, Charlie, were you saying that mountain hours was a debt-backed currency?
No, I said I don't like the idea of a debt-backed currency,
so
like the U.S. dollar and others.
Okay, now specifically though, Wayne is saying that we should be eliminating usury, that there should be no fee for borrowing of money. Wayne, is that exactly what you're asserting here?
There should be no fee for the issuance of the money or for the lending of the money.
So, someone like if I have $10 and I want to loan someone $10 and say, hey, but if you're going to have this for a year, I want some return on my time preference. The basic idea that I'm expressing
money is a commodity.
I don't need my money now, but you need it now, and it's worth more to you now, and it'll be worth more to me later if you pay me that interest. Shouldn't I have the right to charge someone interest for making that loan?
Well, there's two issues. There's number one, this is I believe in voluntarism, so ultimately people can do what they want. But the issue is that we have to change our meaning of what money is. Money is our value. It's not someone else's value that we have to pay them to use their value. We have value ourselves. So we can issue an IOU ourselves. That's what money is. So we have to get out of this paradigm that we believe money is a commodity, when in fact money is just an IOU. It's a private contract. So as long as we're ultimately, in order for me to pay that loan back, I would have to produce value. So if I was going to produce value anyway, then I could create the money myself.
Charlie?
I don't understand how you're saying that self-issuing money and IOUs are not debt. You're issuing your own money. You're basically taking on your own debt because you have to be paid back. And what's to say that I can't issue the most amount of money that I want? I'm in this city. I issue IOUs to everyone. I give everyone all my IOUs, and all of a sudden people are trusting me. And then I pick up and go to the next city and I change my name, and all of a sudden I screwed everyone in the city before and I start all over again.
Yeah, well, I'm describing what money is. Money is, ultimately money is an IOU. That's how it was issued. Within Mountain Hour's system, we issue it as a credit because the business creates the value first. The value in Mountain Hours, so in that paradigm as described with the IOU, the money is issued first as an IOU, then the value is produced. With Mountain Hours, the issuer, the value is created first, then the currency is created. So that's the difference with Mountain Hours, is it's created as a credit.
Charlie?
No, I'm playing out realistic scenarios in my head of how Mountain Hours would be used in an economy, even a local economy, where you have, unfortunately, people who commit fraud and people who commit illegal acts, and I'm all for self-regulation, of course, but at the same time, I just think that issuing IOUs, those IOUs are then passed on to someone else. So if I have someone and I say, please clean my garden or plant flowers, and I'll issue you an IOU for 2 or 3 Mountain Hours, or IOU hours, let's just call them, and then someone else can take those IOUs. Can someone else take those and reuse them? Are IOUs transferred?
That's what money was originally. Yes, the IOU could, let's say, for instance, I was a wheat farmer, and you produce bread. Well, you can produce bread all year long, but I can only produce wheat for the summer months. So, however, I need to feed my children. So I would issue you, I'd want to execute a barter with you, let's say a loaf of bread in exchange for a bushel of wheat. So I would issue an IOU to you that I'll deliver a bushel of wheat upon the harvest. That way I would trade my producer. I'm a producer. I issued an IOU to you. I get your loaf of bread. I feed my kids. You have the IOU that you could turn around and you could use that to go buy a hat or something from another producer. So ultimately that IOU would come back to me at some point and it would be redeemed. So it comes down to the issuer must be honest. It's a private contract, and it's essential in any society to be moral that you have to have people honor their contract. It's the most basic tenet of a responsible society. So the more local and organic this is, the more you're able to keep a head on that. So, I want to express that we don't do this with Mountain Hours. It's not issued as an IOU. It's issued as a credit after the value has been produced in advance.
Charlie?
So you bake my bread for a whole season, and then you decide to give me all that bread and everything, and then once it's my turn to give you all the wheat that you need for you and your family, I say, sorry, I just don't want to do it, or I get up and leave. What happens then?
Well, again, we're not describing Mountain Hours right now, but if that were to occur, in any society, you're always going to have miscreants or absconders, let's call them. Ultimately, those people would be removed, they would be separated from society, that you would no longer accept their IOUs, just like, you're always going to have people in any society that break the rules. So you can't just assume that that's what everybody's going to do. You can't have a system based upon that. When money is made to be abundant and you have an abundant society and people are doing what they like and they love for a living, they produce and they fulfill their IOUs. People are normally good, and that's their natural nature, is to honor their contract. We live in a scarce society now, so it's hard to kind of believe people that will fulfill these contracts. But ultimately, with mountain hours, we issue the currency in advance so that, let's say, for instance, somebody did leave our barter network. The currency that was issued upon their value still circulates even if they leave the network. So it doesn't matter if any particular individual leaves, or there's sometimes you can't fulfill your IOUs based upon weather or health or a variety of other reasons, not just because they're of a poor moral value, let's call it. So mountain hours alleviates those issues because the currency circulates irrespective of any particular producer leaves the network.
Mr. Still, welcome back. If you would, please, we're getting into some of the more specific comparisons of the advantages and disadvantages of these various systems. But I think there's when you're advocating for a government-backed or government-issued debt-free currency, and at the same time saying that there should be these competing currencies, the burden would be on you then to justify why do we also need the government involved at that point?
Issuing money is the most important responsibility of a sovereign nation. That's always been the way it is, and I think everything else just has to fall in the category of a complementary currency. I think there are also plenty of ways to do this, and any one of them is going to be far superior to the debt-based money system that we have today. So, I'm really not the expert in comparative economics. I'm more the historian of this crowd, and debating the minutiae of which one of these other systems is better than the other is beyond my expertise.
Well, in the case of the currency that you're advocating, historically, it's been a challenge for competing currencies to even have the opportunity to exist when the government is issuing a fiat currency, right? There's always been an interest in whoever controls that fiat currency, and I suppose in the system you're suggesting this would be fundamentally different, but that there would be an interest in keeping competing currencies from existing because it threatens that monopoly. If you have competing currencies, wouldn't the government fiat currency quickly lose out to things like Bitcoin or mountain hours?
I have trouble talking to you when you don't understand the basic assumption of how money is created in the United States. The government does not issue fiat currency. Banks create all money with the exception of coin.
Well, no, I'm talking about the system that you're suggesting, a government-issued fiat currency, or that would not be debt-based.
Uh-huh.
So what would prevent competing currencies from simply immediately causing the people to abandon a government-issued fiat currency in place of these alternatives?
Well, if that was the case, that would be fine. But all of these competing currencies, typically, I can't imagine an example where it would have a higher cost of use than the ubiquitousness of a debt-free government-issued money. If that was not the case, and the competing currency could circulate with less cost of use and more freely, then fine. That would be fine with me.
Mr. Walton, mountain hours. Obviously, there are some disadvantages to having a physical paper currency compared to what we see as an obvious advantage of Bitcoins being digitized and international and seemingly better poised for global adoption. What can mountain hours do that Bitcoins can't?
Well, with respect to the virtual aspect, it is possible, and it's already being done with some local currencies such as the Bristol pound. The Bristol pound is a local paper-based currency that's both physical and virtual. And I might add, they can have text payments, and the mayor of Bristol is actually taking his pay in the form of the local currency. So that's the next step for them to actually be accepting some of the taxes in the form of the local currency. So that is that's very heartening. One of the primary things that will create abundance and a complete renaissance for humanity is once we start loaning our money, H-O-U-R, without interest. That removes 20 years from a 30-year mortgage, and it creates a paradigm where, people are, if you were to get a house, say at 25 years old, you have your house owned free and clear by age 35. So you create an entirely different paradigm where there is no national debt, there is no public debt, there's no private debt. Humanity, at that point, people will be able to work within the vocation of their passion instead of doing these soul-stealing jobs such as working at the TSA or any other myriad of ugly, disgusting jobs that people just don't want to do. There's approximately 40% of everything that we pay for is based upon usury at some level of the economic system where people are paying interest at various levels of the production cycle. So usury free is the way that we create abundance for humanity. And because bitcoins are based upon a commodity, they can't be issued and loaned without interest. So I would say that's, and it's scarce. So because by virtue of it being scarce in the first place, it's not really fundamentally tackling the problem that we have right now. Right now, Federal Reserve notes are scarce already. That's the reason why people are getting foreclosed on. The defaults are built into the system because Federal Reserve notes are already scarce. For us to adopt a currency system such as gold, silver, or bits that are even more scarce, plays into the hand of the people who want to engineer defaults and foreclosures, bankruptcies, and loss of sovereignty. That's what the private bankers want, is for us to default and to be debt slaves. That's what we are right now. So I believe in my soul, deeply investigated this, is that 1,500 2,000 years of usury-free economics is what's necessary for humanity to have massive, massive abundance.
Thank you, Wayne. Do we have any questions from the chat, Carrie?
Yes, Liberty Panacea has a question for Bill Still, which is, would there still be legal tender laws in your preferred form of currency?
I'm not sure about that. Certainly, in order for a national money to be national, it has to be good for the payment of taxes. Now, whether that involves legal tender laws by necessity or not, I'm not sure.
Okay, and then also, if we switch to a public debt-free fiat currency, what is going to stop government from enacting a huge amount of programs and enacting extremely high taxes?
Well, in a rightly composed debt-free government-issued money system, you don't look at taxes as for revenue production. The only reason taxes would be necessary would to take money out of the system should inflation arise. But as Wayne pointed out, we're not in the hyperinflationary scenario here. We're in a scarcity scenario, and so the only inflation that there is that which is created by the Fed and their QE artificially pumping money into just one section, the top 1%, the financial section, and them being allowed to play in this giant worldwide casino called the derivatives market.
Charlie, when people say that Bitcoins have been hacked, what is your response?
Bitcoin is an open source protocol. It's never been hacked. Bitcoin exchanges who operate their own security have had their wallets hacked just because their passwords may have not been strong enough. It's like saying someone hacked into your bank account and sent all your money away through a wire transfer, but you don't say that the dollar was hacked. People who say that just don't understand exactly what happened in the situations. Bitcoin is just like email. It's a way, it's a standard or a protocol. But if you will, I just want to comment on a few things about mountain hours that I heard before. I'm having a little difficulty getting over what was said about that. If you take a mortgage over 20 years, it may go from a 40-year mortgage to a 20-year mortgage if we're not charging interest. But my question is, who is issuing that mortgage if they're not getting interest payments? We have this whole concept of opportunity costs that we haven't even touched on, is that dollars, like you said, are worth valuable, and their time is very important. $500 to me now may be worth a lot more to someone else because they need to pay off some debt or they need to pay off a mortgage or something like that.
The currency cooperative issues the loans. Ithaca, New York had a loan that they actually issued to the bank. That is the fundamental paradigm shift for us to understand, is the people of the currency cooperative loaned $30,000 worth of hours to the bank. The people are the value. The private bankers do not produce the value. The people produce the value. They loan $30,000 interest-free.
How do the people value to the bank or loan to the bank?
You just issue the currency. You know, it's strange. For some reason, people think it's okay for a private bank to issue the currency.
No, I don't believe it's okay for private people to issue their own currency. That's my whole problem.
The cooperative itself, the currency cooperative did as a voluntary cooperative.
So, Charlie, what's the problem with the community then issuing a currency?
Because what's to stop the community from issuing more currency and more currency?
They'd only be stealing from themselves.
Unless it's a community next door that is allegedly or trying to be on a similar system that they want to be able to exchange with.
What if a community wanted to build 10 new houses, so they issue more hours so they can build these houses, but they're intertrading these hours with the community next door, and the community next door is being a lot more fiscally responsible about their spending. The value of one may be different to the value of the other. You have to have proper accounting for that.
Certainly, we can manage these things. We have to get out of this kind of mindset that what if we can't do this because this might happen. We have to be problem solvers instead of problem finders. These things could all be remedied with just best practices and auditing. All we have to do is make sure the auditing is in place by third-party auditors to make sure that everything's being issued with best practices.
Still skeptical, Charlie?
A little bit, but I'm just because I probably don't understand enough about it, just like I was skeptical of Bitcoin when I first heard about it. I think that at the end of the day, the more alternative currencies, the better, because they'll all have different value, and value to interchange between each other will be different, and it'll give the opportunity for companies like mine to be the currency exchangers. So more alternative currencies, the more business for me.
Well, Mr. Still, then, as you suggest a system for a government-issued currency that would create the framework in which this competition could happen, what kind of competition do you anticipate would then result if you had the system that you're advocating?
Well, I don't really care what type of competition comes into the system. And I supported the Utah Monetary Reform Act 2 years ago when Utah allowed gold and silver coin to be used good for the payment of all debts in the state. I would support any type of complementary currency. And of course, one of the gentlemen had a question about the time value of money in a usury-free system. And of course, banks should simply serve as intermediaries between borrowers and lenders, as well as provide other valuable services for which we would all pay. And as far as the time value of money goes, it is acceptable in all religious systems to make loans and include in the amount of the loan and a one-time initiation fee, which would cover all of the bank's costs, including the cost of their employees, the cost of their electricity, et cetera, but not interest per se.
Isn't that just another way of charging interest?
Jewish law allows for interest, by the way. I studied it. Just letting you know.
But I mean, isn't charging a free up front, Mr. Still, even if you don't call it interest, if it's not tied to the amount of the loan directly, but you're saying to cover my administrative costs, I'm going to charge you an initiation fee? I mean, isn't my